How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Scoreboard Talk. Scoreboard Talk is a sports podcast by fans for fans. We'll talk college football and basketball, NBA, NFL, and MLB, plus discuss the week's top stories and more right here on Scoreboard Talk. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Scoreboard Talk. I'm your host, Brian Hall, and today in episode 3, there's some stuff going around this week. We're getting ready to start March Madness. The NFL Combine is this weekend. Duke lost its second game out of the last 3 after losing Zion Williamson, but we're not going to talk about any of that today. We're going to talk about something very near and dear to my heart, and that's college football. And when I say near and dear to my heart, I mean college football is my jam. Like, from watching the elites of Division I all the way down to watching Division III championships or FCS games whenever it's on. I mean, North Dakota State, become a huge fan of them recently, just watching them in the FCS. And so college football is about ready. It's not anywhere near to start, actually, but spring practices, some teams are getting in their spring practice already. Some teams are getting spring practice already in or about ready to start spring practice. Some teams are finishing up their winter workouts, going to start here within the month. And then here comes spring games, and spring games are just real fun atmosphere, kind of a little preview to the season, and then go into the summer conditioning and then fall camp. So today we're going to talk about Big Ten football because I am a huge Big Ten fan. And today we're going to talk about Big Ten quarterbacks because I love the Big Ten. We're going to talk about not really ranking them per se, maybe when it's all said and done, kind of just going from the bottom up as far as looking through each quarterback or each team. And so we'll just start from there. So starting off at the worst team in the Big Ten, Rutgers. They were 1-11 and 0-9 in the Big Ten, and I understand Rutgers is a Division I football team, and any kid that ends up going to Rutgers, you should be very proud that you were able to play Division I football. However, in the Big Ten, the Big Ten has not been nice to Rutgers at all. The Big Ten really wanted to add their market and head into the East Coast. That's why we also have Maryland in the Big Ten now. But Rutgers, ever since the first year or two, it's been all downhill from that. And I don't think it's something that they've been trying to recruit. Really can't. They've had coaches. I mean, Chris Ash, I think this is going to be his 4th year, and not really any improvement at all, unfortunately, for Rutgers. And their returning quarterback anyway, is number 8, Arthur Satowski. He's a sophomore. He started as a true freshman last year. 134 completions to 273 pass attempts, a 49.1 completion percentage, 1,158 yards, and 4 touchdowns to 18 interceptions. And I think Rutgers only had they really didn't have a lot of passing touchdowns, but 18 interceptions, that's really hard for a true freshman coming into the Big Ten, let alone coming into Rutgers. And so he's from ING Academy. He was from also New Jersey, so the hometown kid. He was convinced. He was originally committed to Miami, and he decommitted and flipped to Rutgers. So hopefully for the Scarlet Knights' sake, he can get it rolling here in the second year. They have a couple of good running backs. They did get a recruit this year, Cole Snyder, a 3-star pro-style quarterback from Jamestown, New York. I believe he was at the 62nd in his position, but 10th in the state. And they have a transfer, John Langan, 6'3", 220-pound quarterback from Boston College. So we'll see if they can add any into the mix. But I think for the most part, it'll probably be Satowski. They also have redshirt sophomore Jonathan Lewis and redshirt freshman Austin Alberti. Our next team is Illinois. Illinois went 4-8 in the Big Ten, 4-8 overall, 2-7 in the Big Ten. They were led by number 1 A.J. Bush, the redshirt senior this year. 117 completions to 217 pass attempts, 1,413 passing yards, 6 passing touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. Bush was a very dangerous runner, and so Lovie Smith is trying to get that rolling. I know Illinois was becoming Rutgers-esque in the Big Ten. Unfortunately, they've had to deal with a lot of youth and a lot of injuries, and so they will try to turn it around this year to a better record. They also have MJ Rivers, who is a freshman, 56 over 106, 554 passing yards. 547 passing yards, a 55.4 completion percentage, 3 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. They also have a 4-star recruit, Isaiah Williams from St. Louis. He's an athlete, but he was a dual-threat quarterback. I know for a long time Michigan had been recruiting him, so we'll see if he can add into the mix at all. But A.J. Bush is the redshirt senior. He'll be back for his final year. Hard not to take Bush in this situation. MJ Rivers he had about a 50% year, but we'll see how that goes for the Fighting Illini. Next up, we have Nebraska, and doing my notes, I did not write anything for Nebraska. I didn't realize I was going to try to go from record-wise, but Nebraska had Adrian Martinez, and I do have his stats here. Quick, just to give a little talk about him. Adrian Martinez, in 11 games, he completed 224 passes out of 347 attempts. He had a 64.6 completion percentage, 2,617 passing yards, 17 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. He also had 629 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns. And Scott Frost returns home to Nebraska. I think it's really good for the Cornhuskers. And Adrian Martinez, I think he's gonna be a budding star. Again, they went 4-8, 3-6 overall. They started the season like 0-5. Yes, they had a really tough year. Scott Frost and actually I think Tanner Farmer, a senior lineman, had said, some guys aren't buying in, and it was a huge kind of back and forth battle for that team that year. They kind of turned it around towards the end, but we'll see what the Cornhuskers can do. Nebraska had a pretty solid year, all things considered, and Scott Frost has a quarterback-friendly system. Mackenzie Milton from UCF had a really good year in his second year with Scott Frost, so we'll see how the Cornhuskers do. Our next team up is Maryland, 5-7 overall, 3-6 in the Big Ten. Maryland, they had the unfortunate situation with Jordan McNair and his passing during some offseason workouts, which led to the suspension, and then later firing of head coach DJ Durkin. They have a new head man in Mike Locksley from the OC from Alabama. So we will see how he does. As far as returning quarterbacks go, they had number 11 Kasim Hill, 84 completions over 170 attempts, 49.4 completion percentage, 1,083 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. Tyrell Pigram, a redshirt junior, 37 completions to 67 attempts, 55.2 completion percentage, 561 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Again, running quarterbacks, Tyrell Pigram, Kasim Hill, not really much for running quarterback. They do get a recruit in Lance LeGrand, a 4-star dual-threat quarterback, and a huge transfer from Virginia Tech, Josh Jackson. He did not really play that much this year due to an injury, but Josh Jackson, 6'1", 215 pounds. His career stats: 272 completions out of 454 attempts, a 59.9 completion percentage, 3,566 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. Josh Jackson is a transfer. I think he has his eligibility, and I expect Jackson to come in and win the starting job. It would be hard. Actually, I think he can win the starting job if he can be healthy. He's been a very solid quarterback for Virginia Tech and Justin Fuente. And nothing against Tyrell Pigram and Kasim Hill. Tyrell Pigram, if you remember 2 years ago, he was kind of like that breakout quarterback. Well, then he got hurt. Kasim Hill was the hotshot freshman coming in, and he was playing really good, and then he got hurt. Again, same thing last year where Hill started out, and I believe he got hurt, and then him and Pigram just kind of like traded back and forth throughout the year, not really finding any real consistency between the two. but Josh Jackson is a wild card, and I think Jackson can come in and win the job if he's healthy. Next up, we have the Indiana Hoosiers, and those pesky Hoosiers. Sorry about that, IU, but the Indiana Hoosiers, 5-7, 2-7 overall in the Big Ten. Another one of those years where you think Indiana will finally get through that hump, but they fall back down. Just a consistently average to above average Big Ten team. But they've had some decent quarterback play. They had number 12, Peyton Ramsey, 295 completions out of 447 attempts, a 66 completion percentage, 2,874 yards, 75 yards, and 19 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. He's also been an effective runner for the Hoosiers. They also have Michael Penix Jr., a sophomore, 21 for 34, 61.8 completion percentage, 219 yards and a touchdown. They have Utah transfer Jack Tuttle, 6'4", 207 pounds. He's a 4-star pro-style quarterback. Tuttle, I think, is still waiting on his eligibility. We'll see how that gets ruled, especially in the Big Ten this year. They had their own kind of ruling that was pretty major. Justin Fields, the former 5-star quarterback from Georgia, transferred to the Ohio State Buckeyes, and he was granted immediate eligibility. I mean, pretty immediately. For the transfer stuff, I just hope if the NCAA is going to roll with it, that they just make consistent rulings and not be inconsistent of letting one guy get immediately and not letting a different guy. But for IU, Peyton Ramsey he's been steady for them. I think the Indiana fan base probably want Ramsey to take that next step. They had a pretty solid recruiting class, one of their best in ever. Actually, they got Samson James, from a 4-star running back from Avon, Indiana, to stay home. He was originally committed to Ohio State, but we'll see how it goes. I think Peyton Ramsey is just going to remain the starting quarterback pending any injury. I'm not sure what Jack Tuttle brings to the table other than he was a 4-star quarterback, and we're still kind of waiting on their eligibility, but it's Ramsey's job to lose at the moment. Next up, we have the Purdue Boilermakers. They were 6-7, 5-4 in the Big Ten. Purdue got that monster win at home against Ohio State, and then they got ripped apart by Auburn in the bowl game. Those SEC fanboys trying to bash the Big Ten, that Auburn team just really underperformed. They had some expectations to be a dark horse national title contender, and when they put them on the field with Purdue, kind of an average Big Ten team, there was an evident talent gap from the very first play and so on forth. The Purdue has rising star Rondale Moore and Jeff Brom's offense. It's a quarterback-friendly offense, really air raid, some trick plays in there. So David Blau was the senior. He was able to come back from a pretty horrific leg injury and have a pretty stellar year. So the only quarterback with stats in an actual game is a fifth-year senior, Elijah Sindelar, who kind of did the same thing Blau did the year before. When Blau went down, he was the starting quarterback, and he rose up. He actually played pretty hurt in the Foster Farms Bowl against Arizona. He had a pretty monster performance. But Sindelar, for his career, 227 completions, 405 out of 405 attempts, 56 completion percentage, 2,547 passing yards, 20 touchdowns to 13 interceptions. The rest of the quarterbacks on that roster, number 13 redshirt freshman Jack Plummer. I think Plummer has a pretty good opportunity. He played really good in the spring game, but then again, it's a practice. It's kind of like NFL preseason, where you don't want to take too much of it to where you just build up in your mind, oh, this is how it's going to be. No, you just got to pump the brakes a little bit, but some guys will show out. So I think Plummer has a pretty good shot. They have number 14 Danny Carlolo, a junior. Number 17, Nick Sipe, a redshirt sophomore. Sipe is another one of those guys. He had a decent spring game. I think it's similar to to lose at the moment. He did have an issues with turnovers last year. That's why he had been pulled for David Blau. So my pick would either be Sindelar or Plummer. I think has a pretty good opportunity, and they did get a recruit, Paul Pafiri, a 3-star pro-style quarterback. Probably just add to the depth chart and see where he goes. And finally, our last team is the Minnesota Golden Gophers. They split time between Tanner Morgan and Zach Anixted, they're both sophomores. Morgan is a redshirt sophomore, and he finished out the year as a quarterback, 89 out of 152, 58.6 completion percentage, 1,401 passing yards, 9 touchdowns with 6 interceptions. Anixted, 97 completions out of 187 passing attempts, 51.9 completion percentage, 1,277 yards, and 9 touchdowns with 7 picks. They had 2 recruits this year, Cole Kramer and Jacob Clark. Kramer is a 6'1", 3-star dual threat quarterback, and Clark is a 6'5", 3-star pro-style quarterback. They split between Morgan and Anixted. They finished out the year with a 7-6 record, 3-6 overall in the Big Ten, and they defeated Georgia Tech in the Quick Lane Bowl. And kind of really similar quarterbacks between Morgan and Anixted. So I guess for Coach PJ Fleck, it'll be whoever has a hot hand. I'm sure Fleck would want to go in a 1 quarterback system. But it's going to be a battle out in spring training. The spring game coming up for the Golden Gophers. So that is all that we have for today. On our next episode, I'm hoping to get the rest of the Big Ten quarterbacks and go from there. And so I'm Brian Hall, and this has been Scoreboard Talk. Thanks for listening.